chicken. I'm your guy.
Blinking.
I'll have what Joseph has.
Look, somebody's talking about you.
This is what we call the voice of God.
Popping.
Everybody just gets to focus on you.
Grab me.
Probably not the best thing for an introvert.
I'm asking for you.
Well, I like a good chicken sandwich.
Touch me. Hi, David. Comment.
Oh my God.
Like.
You're actually an identical twin.
Push.
Maybe I'll just ask Julie to talk about what it is to be
No.
an identical twin.
Pick me up.
No, you didn't.
Shouting.
Surprise! Jeremiah, just hang on a second. I just got a text.
There's an edit for your new opening, Joseph.
I feel really honored to have been here, man.
By the way, you've done a masterful job. Seriously.
It was such a joy.
Thanks, Joseph. It's an honor.
Good on you. This was a pleasure.
I mean, you are the prime example of how to pivot in this new environment.
I wish everybody gets an opportunity to interact with Joseph Jaffe and Corona TV.
Who needs Cameo when I've got my own personal Cameo? So let me give you some advice if ever you decide to start your own streaming show. Never say to your guests just before you go live, I'm usually not this manic, because she's now, I can see she's like, I gotta go. Like, this might have been a mistake. But for some reason, Murphy's Law, it's 2020, anything can happen, and it usually does. The leaves were blown, or our leaf blowing wonderful, wonderful landscape has decided this would be the time to start blowing the leaves. And anyway, they've stopped. So everything is good. Hello to my mom in South Africa. We are still using Block today. But, you know, maybe we should we go back to Bubble or go back to the original default? I'm not sure. Maybe I'll let my guest decide whether she wants minimal, whether she wants default, Bubble, or Block. We'll go back to Bubble for now. Bob Farnham says he loves that lead-in. So do I. I love all the lead-ins because it makes me smile. And that's really the goal. You know, a show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. Well, it is December 30th, and it is almost time for New Year's Eve. Tom says, I love the lead-in and music that's so Pavlovian at this point. I'm existentially salivating for today's wisdom. Pavlovian, what does that mean? That you fetch? That you're begging? I don't know what ultimately that's that's affecting you, Tom. Maybe you can tell later. Maybe you're hungry for bacon because today is it is International Bacon Day. It is not a day that I celebrate as a good Jewish boy, but I have a feeling that there are more people out there that are exceptionally excited about bacon. Bacon everything. Bacon milkshakes, bacon ice cream. They put bacon on their own bacon. So just go ahead and celebrate the day. And I celebrate you if this day makes you happy. So let's do some birthdays. Marcus Whitney, who has been on the show. Liesl Wallace, who was at college with me. Chip Russo. Sharon Chimes, who taught all my kids. Larissa Epstein in Australia, and Max Greenberg turns 18 today. Happy birthday, Maxie. Hope you're having a great day. On LinkedIn as well, happy birthday to all of my LinkedIn connections. David Pollenchok, Richie Hanna, Michael Arnott, Shibam Suthar. Hope you guys are doing well today. Well, I can't say next week's guest. Well, I can, but I can also say next year's guest. Isn't that crazy? Next year's guest. We're actually going to be doing, and truthfully, my guest today, Melanie Deziel. I forgot to ask her actually. Did I pronounce it correctly? Deziel? Yeah, she's like, and a little bit of marketing. Deziel? Melanie D, we're going to call her. Melanie is the Chief Content Officer of Story Fuel and the author of the Content Fuel Framework, How to Generate Unlimited Story Ideas. She's actually really kicking off a celebration, if you will, of some of the industry's leading B2B thought leaders, influencers, consultants. And so in January, because look, it's January 2021, so we got to get back to business. We got to get back to a frame of mind where we are creating and we are productive and we are feeding our families quite literally and figuratively. So Ashley, Andy, Christina, Neil, all leading thinkers along with Melanie. And you're going to see, as I said, some of, if not the industry's best and brightest. And then on Friday, we're back to our community shows. Angus Nelson, Tom Morris, Diane Hessen, Rohit Bhargava, and Mark Masters will be my guests. As a reminder, on tomorrow, actually, we're going to be doing New Year's Streamin' Eve. I'm going to be doing a 2-hour live stream, and you guys are all invited. Not only are you invited to actually watch, but you can actually be on the show. All you got to do is type in that URL tomorrow, and you can pop on the show. I need to know who you are, obviously. It's important. But assuming I do know who you are, you'll be able to come on and talk about 2020 reflections, silver linings, predictions for next year, and of course, what everybody loves to make and then break, New Year's resolutions. So hopefully you'll join me tomorrow from 10 to midnight. Melanie says diesel, like the gasoline. Melanie Deziel. I will not make that mistake again. Melanie Deziel. I still like Mel D, or Mel B, Mel D, but we'll go with Melanie Deziel. Thank you for correcting me. In my manicness, I forgot to ask you. I would have asked you. But now it's time for the final seated soliloquy in 2020. It seems so weird. It seems so final, doesn't it? And it's called time travel. I was actually recently asked on a podcast the following question. If you could go anywhere in time, forward or back, well, where would you go? My first answer was I'd go back in time about 20 years and purchase as much Apple, Google, Amazon, and Netflix stock that I could. But my actual answer was nowhere. Going back in time would imply regret. And there's no point in living in the past or regretting any decisions you've made or didn't make, because you can't change the past. But wait, you say, well, as my 13-year-old said and pointed out, alluding to his extensive knowledge of metaverses, alternative universes, time and space continuums, and the like, what if you could change the past? And if so, would that alter the entire world? Butterfly effect, so to speak? Surely a little bit of stock purchases couldn't hurt. I mean, most congressmen do it anyway and get away with it, right? So let's assume I could visit the past and make a few changes without ripping up the current pearl of a year that is 2020. I guess I'd start off by going to Wuhan and declaring that bats were not great this time of year. But again, my answer was nowhere. I wouldn't want to change a thing, because everything that has happened or didn't happen to me has made me who I am today. And that is not a perfect human being by any stretch of the imagination, but it has given me the only thing that counts: an incredible wife, 3 amazing children, and a dog. It has given me the opportunity to reinvent myself during a global pandemic. How many people can say that? It has given me my life, and my life is so uniquely mine. Why would I want to change any of that? I did add at the end of the interview that perhaps the only visit I'd make would be to 1975 to hang out with my dad just one more time, or at least to be able to capture the moment. Again, not to change the past, but maybe just to remember it with only fond memories. So as we wind down a really shitty year, I'm expecting 2021 to still be shitty, but I'm prepared for it, or better prepared for it than I was a year ago. There will be unprecedented triumphs, including reuniting with loved ones who have been apart from us for just too long. And so instead of moving forward in time, let's look forward to a time when the things that really count matter, and the things that really matter count. Happy New Year to all of you. Well, for me, it's a very happy New Year, because it's a time to welcome my first guest of, I would say, the new year. So why even say that she's the last guest of 2020? Why not even just call her the first guest? And of course, I'm talking about Melanie Deziel. Melanie Deziel is a keynote speaker. She's an author, an award-winning branded content creator and lifelong storyteller. She's the author of the Content Fuel Framework, How to Generate Unlimited Story Ideas, and the founder of Story Fuel, which teaches marketers, creators, and companies of all sizes how to create better content. Melanie was the first editor of branded content at the New York Times and the keynote speaker for Content Marketing World 2020. So she knows a thing or two about storytelling and content strategy from a B2B standpoint or any standpoint. Let's welcome her onto the show. Welcome to 2021.
I'm excited to be here. I'm ready for 2021.
I've decided to bring it in early. Why not?
I'm on board.
So diesel, right? Or am
Diesel, like the fuel.
Yeah, diesel. And I'm like, I've now got to just soften the diesel to diesel.
Yeah.
There you go. So by the way, Wendy says 6,000, she's making me feel bad now, $6,000 in Amazon stock in 1999 when I told my husband to buy it. And everyone was like, why? It's losing money. Well, it's worth $3 million today. My husband just told me that yesterday. So turns out, as always, Wendy, that you were right and he was wrong.
I feel like wives generally are. Like, listen to your wife is a pretty good rule of thumb.
I'm telling you. And Tom Morris says, if I could travel in time, I'd want so much to see the future in 5 or 10 or 20 years. Of course, that wasn't pleasant for Mr. Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. Bah, humbug. We're not sure who this LinkedIn user is, but they said, go, Melanie, go. This is such a great guest. And Monif says, it's on my calendar, I guess, referring to New Year's Streamin' Eve. So Melanie, in finding out a little bit about you, the important stuff, because, the crack journalism that is the back office of Corona TV, we go to places that most journalists refuse to go to because they're journalists, and it would be beneath them.
Yeah.
But you said you are a journalist. I actually worked backwards from your bio. Because that's where all the meaty stuff is, right at the end. But you said you're a journalist at heart. What does that mean to you as a business woman, as a content creator, as a content strategist?
I mean, I think it's, when I say I'm a journalist at heart, I almost mean it's my way of moving through the world. I know that sounds kind of deep and woo-woo, but I guess what I mean is that I'm a very, very curious person by nature, and I'm a collector of information, and I love to collect that information and then share it with people for whom it could be useful. And so that comes in a lot of forms. It comes in the form of asking a lot of questions all the time, to the point where people are like, why are you asking so many questions? I just always feel the need to get to the bottom of things and understand more deeply. It's the fact that I'm really into nonfiction. So I just got my end of year Audible report, and I listened to 112 hours of nonfiction this year, just consuming on all different topics, so that I can then turn around and recommend it to people who I think would like it. Same for podcasts. I watch documentaries. I'm just like insatiable for information. And that's really the way I move through the world, is just with this curiosity, this feeling of I can become an expert on many different things, and that is of service to the people that I interact with, because I can often share things that would be helpful for them, whether it's for their health, for their business, for a problem they might be having. It just feels like I'm a collector of information, I guess.
And there's something else. It's not just the ability to collect the information, to be curious, to ask lots of questions, but there's also another very important C word, and that is curation. And with it, a word that is not a beginning with a C, but could sound like it, but quality control.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy, actually, is I feel very lucky to have received an education that made me media literate. So I'm very skeptical of sourcing. I always want to know, okay, well, who sponsors this website? Who's the owner of this publication? Trying to sort of dig into why we may see information a certain way and whether it can be trusted or verified elsewhere. And, I recognize that not everyone has had that ability, has been trained in that, has been taught to be skeptical or to look into the backstory. And so it is sort of a responsibility, I feel, to help play that role of curator and fact checker and say, hey, I know you read that and it seems really compelling, but after looking into it, that may not be, that may not be completely accurate, or that may not be the best route for you to go. I'd love for you to check out some of this other information too. Because I just feel like there's so much out there. It can be really hard to know what to trust or where to go when you're looking for more information on something.
And I think obviously the other part of that is that we all have agendas. We all have self-interest, and maybe sometimes it's just, we write about the things we're passionate about. We talk about the things that are important to us. One of the things that certainly, you would, I'm sure, testify to this is a lot of research, for example, and statistics are conducted and then published and released by people who have a self-serving interest in those results. And then, of course, when we see these data points that reinforce our business worldview, we're very quick to share and retweet and forward without necessarily maybe putting that little disclaimer going, just FYI, this was created, this fantastic report on Native was actually put out by a Native company.
Yeah. And the same thing happens to us in our day-to-day life, right? We always get excited. You see those, especially food-based studies, where it's like studies show that eating, 2 ounces of cheese a day lengthens your life by, an hour or something.
It does?
And of course, the National Cheese Association put out that study. Go figure. There's always a vested interest in some of that research. So it's definitely
morning, by the way.
I will say that was not
glowing.
true. Please. I can see you're just glowing with cheese energy.
With cheese. With stinky cheese. Thank God you can't smell me at the moment. But actually, funny you talk about food. There was just I don't know if you saw, like literally in the last 24 hours, I don't know if it was the FDA or something, not moving away from a position that we're having too much sugar and maybe, I think, was it alcohol or sugar in our lives? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen the latest, but it feels like every other day there's a new recommendation for the ideal diet. I don't know how we're supposed to keep up with that.
Now, one thing about you that's also very curious to me is you are on a perpetual search or quest to find the world's perfect cup of decaf coffee, and there is like does not compute inside me.
I know.
The word decaf. Help me, turn me into a believer.
Well, I'll fill it in. So for me, I have long been a coffee lover. I see that my mom is actually here. She's joined the stream. She will tell you, like, I've been drinking coffee since I was like 4 or 5, and whatever study came out at that time said it was good for asthma. So I started drinking coffee really young. There's my mom. She's the one who just pointed out sugar and alcohol.
Hello, Beth. So your mom is watching you. My mom is watching me.
This is as close to family reunion as we get these days, right?
I know. Well, thank you, Beth, for it was sugar and alcohol.
There you go. Yeah. So I've always been a coffee lover, and I had hit a point in my life, when I was in college, I was drinking 5, 6, 7 cups of coffee a day, and that was something that I recognized at that point, like, this might be a problem. Maybe this is not, the healthiest or the most productive way to live. Maybe this doesn't have all the effects I'm hoping for. So I had been cutting back for a while, but when I became pregnant with my daughter, obviously there's a lot of research that shows you should substantially cut back your caffeine. So, they say you can have 1 cup a day or maybe 2 cups a day, but I tried to challenge myself. Well, what if I switched to decaf completely? And so that's what I did, for my health and for her health. And what I realized is that when I did that, I didn't feel different. And so I realized that for me, it's really about the ritual. It's about the smell. It's about the feeling of being inside of a coffee shop. It's about the comfort of the warm cup. It's really not about the caffeine for me. And so that was sort of my decision, is like, how can I continue to move forward and enjoy those parts of it without some of the side effects of, a racing heart or feeling anxious or those jitters that come or the crash that comes. So I'm able to still enjoy those things that I love. I can still have, the warm comfort of the cup and that, well, when it's not COVID, the sort of ambiance of a cafe, that creative environment, the bustling that I love, and not worry so much about the sort of health side effects. So yeah, but one thing I have learned is that a lot of places don't have very great decaf coffee. It's sort of an afterthought, understandably, right? People are usually there just for the caffeine. So, it's the kind of thing I have definitely had to put a little extra effort in to find decaf worth drinking.
So where is the best decaf coffee that you have ever found or tasted?
There is a cafe in Jersey City, New Jersey, which is where I used to live. We're down in Raleigh, North Carolina now. In Jersey City, New Jersey, called Lackawanna Coffee. And they make a fantastic Americano, decaf Americano. So not a straight up coffee. It's like a shot of decaf espresso and then hot water. So it has the same consistency as coffee. But that was my absolute go-to. Loved it.
Well, this is a show about hope, positivity, and optimism. And if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. But already, I think in that wonderful story that you just told, I think you provided the warmth, the context, and the emotion associated with less about the functional benefit of the cup of coffee and more about every moment, feeling, smell, taste, sound, where you were when you had that cup, place, times, space, so important in terms of our ability. And the key word there is ritual, right? Because stories are rituals in of themselves, but they also contain moments that are rituals unto themselves.
And I think the other thing I've found is, especially this year when there's so much uncertainty, for me, that has given me a sense of certainty, of continuity, of still having some sense of normalcy. So no, it's not normal that I have to get in my car and go to a drive-through to have that feeling, right? And where I might used to go and read the newspaper or something like in a cafe and feel that vibe. But it is that one part of my day that I can still have some of those good feelings, some of that same ritual makes me feel a little bit more grounded. And so I think, especially this year, looking for those things, those feelings, those emotions, those rituals was really important for a lot of people, and definitely for me.
I was waiting for you to drop the little NC reference, because Tom says, Melanie, I hope you're enjoying Raleigh. We're in Wilmington.
Hi, neighbor.
Down the road. So now he's excited, and when he gets excited, he writes a lot of notes. So there you go, Tom. I found out one more thing about you, which I had to go and again do crack research on this. But this idea of tile floors, your obsession on tile floors. So I went and I looked it up, and these are the tile floors. But of course, you're less interested in tile floors. You're more interested in Instagrammable tile floors or Instagram.
Yeah. I think for me, where it came from is it's one of those things where I realized that someone put a lot of thought and effort and craftsmanship. I mean, when you look at like these screenshots here, the amount of detail and artistry and craftsmanship for something that we normally step on and don't pay any attention to, it was kind of a reminder for me, the first time I really looked down and noticed, like, this is a work of art that's on the floor of this shop or, in this hotel lobby. It was sort of a moment for me and a reminder to like look around and find that beauty around you. There's, that awareness allows you to see things that you otherwise just ignore. It's an intentionality about looking for the beauty in your world. And so, it was something that I started doing very similar to like those top left 3 photos, something like that, of like when I had those moments, when I found that beauty in a place that I might not be expecting, to try to document that and hopefully share it as a reminder for others. Like, there's a beauty in places you're forgetting to look at. Try to pay attention, especially the craftsmanship. I think some of these things, especially the older pieces where you think like someone cut these individually into this size. This wasn't a sheet that they got from Home Depot and like placed down. This is like a family craft that has been passed down for generations. And it's an expression of beauty. And so to pay attention to those things and notice them, again, just like another little way to be aware of the world around you and bring in that beauty.
Wendy says, what an amazing craft and skill. So cool. You love it. And she adds that she has friends that are tile. So now we know there's something called tile artisans. And, you know, I think almost, well, first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that, you know, this year my wife actually launched a business on Instagram called Things I Love 203. And it just made me think about these themed days. So I'm going to have to now challenge her to do a tile floor day or a tiled day, and then to tag you and see if you approve. But it actually made me think that when we think about creativity now and anything visual, I think, you know, to describe it and call it Instagrammable, I think is actually a very it's something that I think we get visually, right?
Yeah.
Is it good? Is it great? Is it different? Is it unique? Or is it Instagrammable?
Yeah, I mean, and I think there was an episode of the podcast 99% Invisible, which is sort of about the architecture and all of that in our world, the way our world is visually set up and sort of the stories behind it. They did an episode about how something becomes Instagrammable and what that means to us as a society, to the creators of these things. You know, if you are one of those buildings that gets Instagrammed all the time, like, does that play into your work as an architect, how to create those moments? And I think it's like a lovely intersection of, you know, creativity and marketing and human psychology and the way we document things. It is really interesting because that Instagrammable, like, we kind of have a feeling of what that means, whether we think it's a positive, you know, to our own way of expressing things or not. I think it's certainly worth acknowledging that it's a phenomenon, and if it's something you do consciously, you know, that's something to be aware of.
The concept of also Instagrammable, I think there were two parts to it, right? One is, will we actually create stories, visual stories, with the end in mind, which is, you know, as I said, as seen on TV, as seen on Instagram.
Yeah.
That's the one aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is recognizing how visual our lives have become in this, you know, certainly in 2020, but, you know, with the advent of not just Instagram, but also one of your pet loves, lurker loves, which is TikTok.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting to see how these things change the way we operate. I know Wendy said in the comments that, you know, Instagram is now a verb, right? And that's kind of a sign of success, just like Google. And I think it's, to me, like a personal interest of mine is, like I said, I consume a lot of nonfiction. I spend a lot of time looking at psychology and sociology and social psychology, sort of the way we as a society process and engage with one another and process information. And so, yeah, absolutely seeing the way that all of these platforms have changed our behavior or changed what's acceptable. I mean, I try to think of, if you were to go back 15, 20 years and imagine someone with an old school digital camera, right, which were like big at the time, standing and taking a selfie out in public, you would be like, what is this person doing? Like, what a goofball. Like, it wouldn't make any sense. And now it's the complete opposite, where you see someone taking a photo and you're like, oh, I don't want to get in their way. I understand what's happening here. They're creating a memory to share with someone else of where they were and what they're doing. And so it's become like a total shift in the way we view these kind of behaviors. And I think TikTok is doing a little bit of the same, where people who maybe never had a place in some of these other social environments feel comfortable dancing, making funny faces, like making fools of themselves in many ways on video, when, you know, they may not have been comfortable in a lot of these other forms. I love that it's given people sort of a different language through which to tell their story.
Tom Morris, by the way, says he's loving this idea of becoming a verb. So he wants to become a verb. Tom Morris, me and answer ASAP. Well, I can tell you that will probably involve the words Gilgamesh, the idiot, I was going to say the idiot. Just kidding. The Iliad, the Odyssey. But you will meet him in the after show. Melanie, there is so much to you. And one of the things that I know we were chatting about earlier was how challenging it has been for you this year in 2020 to be not just an incredible entrepreneur, but I'm sure an amazing mom. Although both were probably debatable at different times of the year when you'd look and question.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to chat a little bit about that. Of course, amidst everything, you launched a new book. So it was almost like a trifecta of staying afloat, you know, being there for your family and trying to get something off the ground. Anything else just to make the year more challenging, or was that enough?
The global pandemic played a pretty huge role, I would say.
Oh, yeah, that thing as well.
But yeah, I mean, so just to break down sort of the timing of everything and sort of this perfect storm. So I had my daughter in August of last year. So toward the end of 2019, I was on maternity leave, you know, home with the baby. And I had planned in advance to have my book come out in February of 2020, figuring, okay, I'm gonna have maternity leave. I'll have the holidays with my family, and then I'm gonna come back in style. I'll have a big splash. There'll be something to talk about, a reason to have me on shows and bring me on stage, right? So that was the plan. Obviously, you can't, when you're not a parent yet, you can't really predict how new parenthood will impact your life. You don't really know until you're there, until it's happening, like what life is like. And so I think I, like many new parents, vastly underestimated, you know, or maybe vastly overestimated the amount of work you can get done while watching a baby. Like, they're not really compatible in those early days. There's not a ton you can do at the same time. And so as I was getting ready to come back in February, I felt this sense of like, gosh, there's so much to do. Like, I've been out of the game, you know, especially I know some of us here are fellow speakers. Like, am I thinking, God, I haven't been on a stage in 5 months. Like, have I got this? Am I going to be okay? Do I still remember how to do this? There's all that anxiety built in. And then to have my first book coming out as well, like, how do I plan for this? I've got to do a book tour. You know, there's so many things that I was trying to juggle. In a way, I wasn't working for those months, but I was almost more busy than I had ever been at the same time. It was a very strange time. And so, yeah, the book launches, and then like 3 days later, we're all in a lockdown that has hardly ended since. And it just created this very unique scenario for me from a business standpoint, where here I was coming back. I was trying to have this big splash, this big debut, like this big comeback after having been gone. And then a lot of that was taken away. Wasn't able to do my book tour. We had to cancel that. You know, I had a 5-city book tour that was sponsored, that we weren't able to do. I had, in one 48-hour period, I think I had 18 speaking gigs that were pulled. And remember, in the early days, we all thought this was going to last like 2 months. So that was just the March and April gigs, you know, and then there was a rolling effect all year. And I found myself in this position where I'm trying to market a book when I don't have any of the traditional tools you use to market a book. I am trying to build up this base of my business when the rug has been absolutely pulled out from under the entire speaking industry. And I'm lacking in momentum because I had just come back. And then on top of that, I'm doing all of this from home with a baby who can't be at daycare, right? And my husband is here, and he was in the same boat. He runs his own business as well. So we weren't just figuring out new parenting. We were figuring out new parenting in a pandemic with 2 entrepreneurs working from home in a 500 square foot apartment, hence the move to North Carolina. So it was just like a incredibly difficult thing to juggle all of these things. As we and every, you know, auto commercial has alluded to, these were unprecedented times, and there wasn't a lot of models for how to go about it the right way. So it was definitely a learning experience. It was a sort of learn as you go and pivot every day situation.
Well, you have a big smile on your face, and did you move down to North Carolina this year in the middle of the pandemic?
Yeah, so, we did. So essentially,
I mean, you know that you know, they say the 3 most kind of traumatic moments in someone's life is the death of a loved one, but I suppose it can also be on the opposite of birth. Second is losing a job, or in the case of us entrepreneurs, not having one, you know, or not having any gigs. And then the third one is moving. So I think you might have hit the trifecta there.
Well, I mean, I'm laughing now because, like you said in the beginning, right? Well, yeah. And also, like, we've made it through. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But at this point, it's like, well, if we got through that, like, looking back at this dumpster fire of a year, like, we're all going to be okay. We'll figure it out to the best of our abilities, and you take what comes. And I've long been a proponent of the idea that I wouldn't say like destiny necessarily. I don't want it to feel all, sort of spiritual, but kind of the idea that what's meant to come to you will come to you, and what's not will not. And it's sort of a go with the flow mentality of like, this may not be what I planned, but this is what I've got. And how do I make the best of this situation, or take whatever positive I can from, where I've ended up. And so trying very hard to just make the best of it. As we said, there have been some difficult days. There have been difficult weeks and months. Certainly moving in the middle of the pandemic with at the time, like 9-month-old baby is like not really fun. I wouldn't highly recommend it. But it was necessary for us, and it made a huge difference. So again, we were in the New York City area. We had about 500 square feet, 2 adults working from home, and a baby who's just starting to move around. It was just incredibly unsustainable and bad for all of our mental health. We were really cramped, and especially when you have to stay inside all the time, it felt like it felt heavy. It felt tense in there, And so the choice to come down here was, we've got space and access to nature. I mean, I could see trees out my window. My daughter didn't even touch grass for the first time until we moved here. Like, we were in the city, And so just to have much more space, we've got a dedicated room that I'm in as our office now. It gave us room to breathe. It gave us room to grow. It gave us, a little bit more peace, just in our day-to-day life. And so it was stressful, but absolutely the right decision. All that stress fell off once we got here.
The word heaviness is a loaded word. It's a heavy word, but I think our search is to try and alleviate that heaviness, the ability to because the opposite of heavy is light, and the opposite of light is darkness. And so it's light that works on 2 levels, but also that I'm also very fatalistic in terms of, even in the soliloquy, I spoke about how I reinvented myself in a global pandemic. I would have preferred a global pandemic not to have been the reason to reinvent myself. But sometimes, as they say, beggars can't be choosers. And
that's right.
Something else that I thought of is, and it alludes to the quote that I found for you, which is, work-life balance is about creating a life that flows with you rather than a life you have to power through. And I thought to myself, when you started talking about being a mom and an entrepreneur, and by the way, this was said by Jamie Marie Wilson, I thought to myself, maybe we need a little bit of a refresh, a rethink on this idea of work-life balance, because, we grew up 20 years ago, 30 years ago, being told you got to be one or the other. You got to be and specifically, I'm talking about being a woman. You can either be a mom, or you can be a, fully functioning, performing, successful business woman. Yeah. And then we moved to this belief that said, you can have it all. You can have it all. You can do both, and you can be great at both. And I don't even know if that's necessarily true either. Where are we right now on that journey? What has COVID meant for you, and how has COVID influenced your thinking of what it means to be a mom and an entrepreneur?
So I know it's just out of frame here, but for anyone who follows body language, if you saw my reaction to this conversation was like arms closed, like I'm not having it. So one of the things that I feel like is really important to note is we socially gave women permission to do both, but we did nothing to create systems that actually support that reality. So, it's all well and good for everyone to tell me, yeah, you can be a mom and you can run a business, but are you watching my child while I'm running my business? Or is there any form of support for childcare while this is supposed to be happening? Is there, are there social systems in place that actually make this easier? Does our office offer childcare or no? You start to look at these things and say, you've given us permission, but you've not changed anything about the system that didn't allow that to happen easily before. And so that's one of the topics that I was reading a lot into. I think I've always identified as a feminist, but I think being pregnant made me a much more vocal assertive, curious, and sometimes angry, about the inequity that exists in so much of the system. And that manifested in some of the books that I read this year, just trying to educate myself and say, well, how can I, it's great to complain. Like, I'm sure that feels wonderful, but that doesn't do anything. How can we affect change? How can I acknowledge the role I'm playing in this system? And how can I empower women that I work with to make changes in their lives that they may want to? And so it's just something I've been hyper aware of this year is, and if you look into this, there have been so many articles about how women are disproportionately affected by this pandemic in a number of different ways, from the fact that they occupy the vast majority of care workers. So they're the people, nurses, home health aides. They're a lot of the folks who are on the front lines who are dealing with this in a very real way. They are also generally the ones who are tasked with, taking over in lieu of daycare, in lieu of schooling, in lieu of transportation to and from any of these places, taking care of elders who may not be able to live in their normal care systems for safety reasons. And yet, again, we're telling them you can have it all, but also take care of your ailing parents, but also make sure your 2 kids are on homeschool every single Zoom hour of the day, and also make sure the baby gets fed every 2 hours, but you can definitely have it all. So it just feels like a horrific double standard. Like, we're giving women permission to do more, and now expecting them to be able to do both, but creating no possible pathway realistically for most women to actually do that. And so, yeah, it's something I'm super passionate about, and I have been known to be vocal about this particular topic. It drives me nuts.
Your neighbor Tom says, so true. We are social system idiots. Race, gender, and so much is affected by systems. We need to be systems thinkers and changers. I was going to say, it makes me realize the change the change should not come from you, even though you are changing. We have to make the changes. We need to institutionalize, this at an enterprise level. We have to create those systems in order to walk the talk, because we are just not only so full of hypocrisy and double standards, but it's all lip service, and it has to change.
Well, it's really easy to find these parallels that prove that it's not an unwillingness to change. It's this particular topic, as well as, racial diversity and equality that are very similar sticky topics. The fact that so many offices allow pets to come to work. That my dog has to be at home and needs to be walked and cared for and given attention, but have given no thought or support to the children. I mean, they're the future of, we need them to exist as a species, and yet there's very little support to make that happen. And so, yeah, it's exactly, I think I see Tom again in the comments, without a system change, you can have it all is misleading hype. Yeah, and that's exactly how it feels. It feels like what we've done by saying you can have it all is shift the blame onto women who aren't able to have it all in a system that doesn't support that. It's my problem because I can have it all. I just can't figure it out. Right. And so it's just, if you can't tell, it drives me absolutely bonkers.
Well, I'm telling you, the one good thing to come out of 2020 is going to be Tom Morris. Mark my words. But I think if there is a silver lining here, it is that we are going to see companies, whether they like it or not, and screw them if they don't, rethink how many days we work in the office and how many days we work at home. And in addition to all of that, hopefully there will be a strong rethink about how we take care of the people that that rely on us, that we love, that love us, and find the balance. And for me, the key word is quality, right? My biggest pet peeve with the whole system I just cannot understand how people could commute 2-3 hours a day, how unproductive that is, but also what could happen for their own mental health if they could slice that in half.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think that's another one that this year has really caused, and I think a lot of people to kind of reflect and think all these things we've been told for so long. You have to come to the office. You can't work from home. You need to do all of these different things. this out of necessity has proven that that's just not the case anymore. And so when you can't tell your employees any longer, like, you must come to the office, when we've successfully, achieved perhaps even more working from home, it forces us to say, well, then why do I need to work 9 to 5 either, right? Why does it have to be that time slot? Why does it have to be in this place? Why do I have to work within this strict confines of what I'm allowed to? Why can't I try a different software, a different tool, a different method of doing this work? I think it's sort of upended the idea that the way we've always done things is the way it has to be done. And some individual organizations have done that, are really forward thinking and have been working from home or fully remote or all these things. But as a society, we've sort of been forced to face this reality. It's like, maybe a commute's not necessary. Maybe you don't have to have the expense of an office. And if you don't have the expense of an office, then how else can you support the well-being and success of your employees? Whether that's getting them a home office set up, giving them a stipend to be able to do things that are, more suited to their mental health, to their productivity.
That's the journalist in you for sure. The curiosity, the exploration, and I think the answer is we are going to see tremendous, irreversible, and hopefully very productive changes, productive for humanity and for our mental health. Now, one of the things that you were mentioning is that you've done a lot. You are a vociferous reader, and reading has been a big part of your mental health journey. And so I said, when I created the show, I basically said, I don't know if and it looks like Tom may have rebranded you as Mel D now, but I don't know that she knows that I have a trap for all my guests, which is when they recommend a book, they have to now, of course, I'm only joking, but they have to go and find the author and bring them on the show. But as I said to you before, maybe we'll even interview them together. But I would love to forget about that for a moment. What books have been so influential and important for you? And I described you as a giver because you want to share these books with other people. So I would love for you to recommend. Tell us what books we should be reading.
Yeah, so the first one is actually captured partially in this screenshot here, and on par with the conversation we were just having. Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Designed by Men. So this book really shows you different things that you didn't even realize had sort of hidden sexism beneath the surface. And it helps you be more aware of how you can be part of the solution. So one of the examples I share all the time, which blows everyone's minds, every car safety rating you have ever seen only applies to men. They only use male dummies and dummies with male proportions and weight and height and everything for all the safety testing. So, the airbags are only tested on men. The seatbelt efficiency is only tested on men. And as a result, women die in the exact same scenarios much more often and sustain much more serious injuries. And that's something we're not aware of. Or medical dosage, whether you are an 18-year-old woman who weighs 100 pounds or a 50-year-old man who weighs 350 pounds, the adult dose for your medication is probably the same. And that's not accurate. It can't possibly be, right? And we have different hormones that process things in different ways. Our military women are wearing bulletproof vests designed for men that don't fit them properly and getting shot in the same sort of environments, wearing the same equipment because it's not designed for their body shape. So there are just a lot of ways that it opened my eyes to the fact that more work needs to be done just in some of these basic situations that are our health, our safety. And if you're not aware of it, you can't be part of the solution. So a big part of what I was reading this year is, where are the gaps in my own knowledge? How can I better understand this situation so I can be part of that solution?
I mean, I'm shocked to even find out about that. It blows my mind. And the only agreement that I have with the way things are is that when it comes to being a dummy, that certainly is something reserved for males. But that, we deserve it. But it's not just, I mean, those things are almost egregious, and it speaks to the systems. There's other things like workplace culture and a certain unsaid passive aggressiveness that have made it very, very hard for women. It comes back to, I almost feel like this is a stereotypical point, but it's so egregious. It's the fact that when a woman stands up and speaks up, they're seen as overly aggressive versus, good on you, like
a visionary.
Exactly. What do you, it's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I could talk about this all day. But the other things in the book, little things, and again, that we don't think of. So think of the way that we clear snow, right? We clear snow after a storm. The priority is always highways leading into city centers and then major thoroughfare roads. The priority is not sidewalks, where women tend to be doing their care work with a wheelchair, with a stroller, with a shopping cart. And what that does is it's this subtle thing that says this is the priority of our society, that the men who tend to be more likely driving on these roads to their jobs, and this is in other societies as well, where that gender and work balance is not quite as equal as it may be here in the US. That they've done studies that showed that society was more productive and there were fewer injuries from slips and falls on ice when they prioritized sidewalks and walking spaces over, even if there's half an inch of snow. You don't need to plow the highway. It's going to be fine in half an hour, but you've got people who are slipping and falling and having, completely unnecessary injuries because we've prioritized, the streets over
the tractor trailers and, those Walmart and Amazon deliveries. They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. Give us a recommendation. Another book you read that you'd recommend.
Another book that I read, similarly sort of up on my soapbox here, is How to Be Anti-Racist by Dr. Ibrahim X. Kendi. And this was another book of realizing, particularly around, the early to mid part of the year when there were these widespread conversations happening around racial inequity. The realization to me was I could very easily say, like, I don't think I'm the problem. Like, I proactively try not to be the problem, but I wasn't trying to be the solution. Right. And like, that wasn't good enough for me to say, like, well, I'm not racist. I'm not, using racial slurs. I'm not firing or hiring people unfairly. I'm like, that's not enough. It's still happening all around us. And if I'm not actively part of the solution, then I am part of the problem. I'm okay with status quo if I'm not making change actively. And so this book really opened my eyes, helped me better understand the ways that I could actively be part of the solution, the way that I could be a better ally, the kind of ally that I thought I already was. How could I do a better job of that? And so there were a number of books on my list this year that were part of that, self-education. If I can't admit that I don't know something, then I can't get better. And so it was really important for me to be a part of that. And so How to Be Anti-Racist, and
I did
another
reach
one.
out to Ibrahim Kendi to come on the show back then, but of course at the time that
He's
book
a little busy. Yeah.
So it's a good reminder for me to try again. And I love what was so smart about the frameworks. It's like good business books, right? And like good stories can be distilled into a tweetable moment. And so the idea of non-racist versus anti-racist being described as part of the problem, part of the solution, was a brilliant kind of framing or rubric to be able to help people with that light bulb moment, which is to say, oh, wait a second. So what I was doing was good, but it wasn't enough.
Right. Well, and it's sort of like, we know there's an open wound on your arm and you're like, well, I'm not shoving dirt in it. And it's like, well, okay, that's great. I'm glad you're not shoving dirt in the open wound, but like, wouldn't you also like to clean it and put medication and a bandage and be part of actively healing that, as opposed to just not making it worse? Like, I don't want to move through life not making things worse. That's not my MO. And so, for me, that, and another book I read, sort of sandwiched with that was White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. And again, I think it was important for me to understand the power that the words I use have, and how can I make sure that the words I'm using are not part of that problem, that I'm not minimizing someone else's experience.
And I did the same thing. I reached out as well. So now we have video footage to say, please come on the show. Come on the show. Yeah. I'll even have. You've been rebranded, by the way. I was going to say you'll even have Mel D come on and interview you with me, but now Tom has decided Wonder Woman is much better. He's definitely enthralled. I love how you've been part of you are actively choosing to be part of the solution. You are, this reminds me that with all this talk from, we've been through from Me Too to Black Lives Matter, we have to move beyond talk into work. We have to create and be part of the solution versus exacerbating, lamenting, or just discussing the problem. One is not good or bad, but it is an end. It is a step followed by another step. And that is the essence of keep walking.
Yeah. And the thing for me is, we can think these things all we want. You can understand and see the problem, but you need to have the information and the language and the understanding to be able to speak up when you see those problems happening, right? And so for me, the answer is always, how can I learn more? How can I close this knowledge gap? How can I make sure that I have the tools and information I need, to move forward the way I want to? And so again, that insatiable curiosity, that need to read and learn and watch documentaries. I mean, I made the list of books, but I also watched, 13th on Netflix, the 13th Amendment film, and that was incredibly informative. I mean, there's so much out there, but you have to be willing to acknowledge what you don't know to start learning to be a part of that solution.
Yeah, well said. By the way, we have validation on the new branding, so I can see a logo being developed. This is a personal branding consult, pro bono consult that your mom approves as well.
All right.
You see, you've changed from this to to that. I like it.
My alter ego.
The final, I want to make sure that we talk about your wonderful book and in innovating and being, necessity is the mother of invention. Tell us a little bit about the story of the viral tweet thread and how you went out marketing and thinking of the guerrilla marketing side of the book.
Yeah. So one of the things I talked about earlier is, I launched the book at the end of February, and then the whole world went into shutdown, at least here in the US. That's about when we started. And, Amazon was only shipping essential items, which, my book did not meet the same level of criteria as like hand sanitizer and, other necessities, Clorox and whatnot, masks and gloves. So it was very difficult to get any kind of momentum, especially when, as I mentioned, we didn't have a book tour. We didn't have signings. I couldn't do a launch event. Like, it was all gone. And so I really started to think about what are the tools that are at my disposal. So again, try to make the best of the situation. And so I leaned hard into podcasts. I went on, I think, like 80 plus podcasts this year. I mean, it's been a busy year, for podcasts for me. But I was also thinking, how can I reach my audience in a way that is maybe less crowded? And so the solution I came up with to test out was I went to Unsplash, the website that offers free stock photography that, suits all different kinds of aesthetics and different purposes. And I uploaded photos of my book that were in a stock photo-like arrangement. So, it's a person at a cafe writing, and my book happens to be on the table next to them. And that might make a great lead photo for, your article about study habits or productivity or how to use your planner or any number of things. And so really strategically thought about, where is my audience of creators, of marketers, and what kind of stock imagery might they be looking for? How can I create images featuring my book to help them reach my ideal audience? And so it was an experiment. I had no idea if it would do anything, but to date, we've got more than 500,000 impressions on those images. So totally free. They've been seen more than 500,000 times and downloaded, I think, 1,500 plus times. And each of those downloads means this photo is at the top of somebody's blog post or used in social or as a thumbnail on their YouTube video. So it's certainly getting some visual mileage, and that was really the goal.
What was so great about that is, once again, your love of journalism and your curiosity, but ultimately the idea of providing context and being useful. And, it's something that Seth Godin spoke about last week. And you really were demonstrating that this wasn't just words on a page or a book, but there was the ability to learn from the book, but even the book itself could be actually helpful and useful.
Well, and I try to practice what I preach, and at least be transparent when I can't. And so it was my attempt to say, well, how can I create visual assets that do a good job of spreading the word of the book? And that was my attempt, and I'd say it was successful so far. The investment was really only my time, and then we've gotten 500,000 impressions at least, and I will. It's nothing to shake a fist at. I'll take it.
Well, I just want you to acknowledge that the reason why you even created this idea and executed it so well is because of your love of Instagrammable tile floors. You see, it all comes back full circle.
Yeah, I guess I need to figure out. I need to make my book cover out of tile, and then put that in my kitchen, perhaps. I don't know. There's something there.
Well, that will be your next book, and hopefully it will be a book that you don't have to launch successfully during a global pandemic. You can find out more at contentfuelframework.com. Buy the book. I've provided a link to Amazon in the comments below. And wait, there's more. If you go to contentfuelframework.com/workbook, you can actually get a companion workbook that coaches through coming up with over 1,000 content ideas. I mean, God knows I've created more content in 2020 than in my entire professional career, every day 90 minutes, sometimes more. And now I'm thinking about how to cut it up and slice it and create context. Yeah. One of the things that I've done is generating what I call a Corona question, which I then stitch together and release with all of my guests from a week. If you wouldn't mind, please indulge me and people watching with the answer to this week's Corona question, which is, what is the one silver lining, if any, that you'll take away from 2020?
Gosh, I think there's a couple different ways that I could answer this. I mean, I know for one, I am so appreciative of all this time that I've been able to spend with my daughter, that as difficult as it may be to work from home during a pandemic like this, I have seen so many moments of learning, of realization, of growth and change in her that surely would have happened at daycare while I was working otherwise. And so that's been magical. But I think the other thing is it's restored some of my faith in humanity, and that the way that people have kind of come together to help each other, the resilience that so many of us have shown. There's lots of ways we haven't handled this particularly well as a nation, but I think individual people have certainly showed their ability to care for and help and celebrate others.
Well, one of those people has been Wonder Woman. Melanie, I'm so glad not only that we had this opportunity, but that couldn't think of a better person to be the final guest of 2020, or more importantly, as I said, the early first guest of 2021. Melanie is the Chief Content Officer of StoryFuel, the author of the Content Fuel Framework, How to Generate Unlimited Story Ideas. And by the way, that just rolls off the tongue, the Content Fuel Framework, and no tongue-tiedness coming from me. You can follow Melanie on Insta, where you can see maybe some of her love for tile floors. You can follow her and her viral, brilliant tweets at and I'm going to mess it up. I'm thinking diesel. And I was thinking gasoline, and I was like, no, you're confusing alliteration with synonyms. You dummy. You can find out more at the contentfuelframework.com. Buy the book, get the workbook, get the t-shirt, which now has her new logo on, and more importantly, come and hang out with us at the Zoom after show. Melanie, it's been a real pleasure, and I wish you and your expanding family a wonderful, successful 2021 with lots and lots of light. Lots of light. And final word to Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go. I'll see you guys tomorrow night, New Year's Eve.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.